Peru was included on maps of the civilized world in 1532. 3 years later, the Spanish conqueror Francisco Pizarro founded the city of Lima. The other bright day in the city's history was July 28, 1821, when José de San Martín announced Peru's independence there. The statue of the general's horse is standing on the square named after him. A pedestrian zone connects this to the Army Square. In almost all cities of Peru, the main squares bear the same names, and even the capital is no exception. Lima, mainly during the 17th and 18th centuries, suffered serious earthquakes several times, destroying a lot of the past memorials. Pizarro's governor's palace was also destroyed. The presidential palace with its white arcades has taken its place on the northeastern side of the main square. The small settlement on the bank of the Rimac River was originally called Ciudad de los Reyes, meaning Kingstown, and its trellised street structure was planned along Spanish lines. It was surrounded by a city wall of 10 kilometers, which served the conquistadors well during the Inca attacks. Lima's first centuries were filled with combat. The Incas wanted to retain their country from the Spanish, whose unity was weakened by internal quarrels. During the nearly 300-year reign of the Austrian and Bourbon houses, 40 sub-kings followed one another, while the city was improving and eventually became rich. It reached its heyday in the 17th century, but at this time, as if the natives' curse were at work, a series of natural disasters hit Lima. At the beginning of the 20th century, the number of inhabitants in the city did not even reach 200,000, and its basic area was only 5 times bigger than at the time of Pizarro. The capital of Peru is today one of the most inhabited settlements of South America, with 8 million inhabitants, making up 1/3 of the country's population. In the 1960s and 70s, economic collapse and catastrophic unemployment led needy villagers to the city, where they settled in the dirty holes of the city outskirts. As an effect of growing economic stability of the past few years, the city is starting to regain consciousness and shows a nicer face to tourists arriving in larger numbers. The oldest memorial of Plaza de Armas is the bronze fountain, splashing here since 1650, standing in the center of the square. Handsome cabs waiting on the square proceed along the triangle made up of the Plaza de San Martín, the Central Market Hall, and the Plaza de Armas. In this area, we can see the nicest colonial-style buildings of the city. This district possesses the most museums, churches, libraries, and public buildings. The first and still operating University of South America, San Marcos University, founded in 1551, stands out in this triangular-shaped area. The highlight of the main square is the Lima Cathedral and the Archbishop's Palace built into it. With its decorative, carved wooden balconies, the construction of the first church, not worthy of the name cathedral, began in 1535. But it seemed too small and, based on Pope Paul III's bull, new construction started. An earthquake destroyed this, and José Antonio Manso de Velasco rebuilt it. The building standing today is the proud work of Ignacio Martorell. Damage caused by the earthquake of 1940 was alleviated by Emilio Harth Terre and his group of restorers. An exhibition of valuable religious objects has recently been opened in the church. Highlights of the interior include a nicely carved church choir loft, the Baroque-style Immaculata Chapel, the altar of John the Baptist, and the famous statues and reliefs by Montañez. The main site of the cathedral is Francisco Pizarro's tomb, located in a chapel to the right of the entrance. Only in the early 1980s did researchers discover that the bones of an unknown man have been resting in the sarcophagus, while the conqueror's mortal remains were buried in the crypt of the church. The change was made, and today most experts agree that Pizarro is now resting in his own coffin. The conqueror, famous for his mercilessness, was born in 1475 in Spain. The indignant conquistadors killed him in Lima when he was 66. He paid with his life for treating his fellow men cruelly. Behind the iron-trellised fence of the presidential palace, the Junin Hussars, who wear traditional red and blue uniforms, change musical guard each day at noon. The event always attracts a crowd of tourists, but the soldiers cannot be approached at close distance, and they're guarded by commandos armed with water cannons and attack jeeps. All this is a bad remnant of the terrorist attacks of the 80s. Public security downtown has become considerably better, but foreigners are still better off avoiding the poor areas. The pedestrian zones of Lima exhibit a strange mix of covered shop streets and shopping centers of the 21st century and colonial style and modern buildings side by side. Pedestrians offer a similarly mixed picture, as we can see the descendants of Incas, Quechuas, and other natives often dressed in traditional dress, as well as the Spanish, Mestizo, and Indians dressed in European clothes. The picture is further colored by tourists arriving from various parts of the world. Often, the only income for the local poor people is the street trade of a wide selection of goods. You can buy local handicrafts, tapestries, and souvenirs at a low price. But do not forget the obligatory bargaining and beware of pickpockets. The best period to visit Lima is from January till March, as during the rest of the year, impenetrable fog covers the city and there's often drizzle. Many ask why the Spanish have chosen such a cloudy, wet place as their capital. The Inca capital, Cuzco, was far away, and on the coast, it was easier to uphold communication with the mother country. Of course, people were also living here before the conquistadors. Some stone pyramids in museum collections commemorate the so-called Lima culture. The Spanish conquistadors, longing for colony, territory, and gold, deluded the world, and perhaps themselves, claiming to convert to Christianity the barbarous heathen natives who for centuries had been living happily with their own gods and traditions. The Spanish Catholics built several churches. The first was constructed on the site of the first Mass celebrated in Lima. Today, this church is located in the Jirón de la Unión, the pedestrian zone connecting the main square and the San Martin Square. In the city and in the closely surrounding area, several adobe pyramids, the so-called huaca, have been excavated, mainly in San Isidro and Miraflores districts and in the suburb of Ate. The real purpose of these stone pyramids with stairs is as much not 100% clear as that of the pyramids in Egypt. According to the generally accepted opinion, these were cult places, sanctuaries, where sacrifices were presented. To the south of Lima, in the area of the Purucucho ruins, an ancestral labyrinth of 1,500 square meters has been excavated. To the north of Lima on the coast, we can also find holiday resorts and archaeological areas. Due to the heavily rolling sea and the high cliffs, the coasts of Lima are good only for windsurfing, but not for swimming. So the city dwellers travel 40 kilometers to Ancon, and that has a nice beach. The fog, the garua, which is a feature of Lima, does not have any effect on this Pacific coast. The rivers rushing down from the Andes turn the area into a verdant, arable land. This is the larder of Peru, where vegetables and fruits are produced in large quantities. The uninhabited Sechura Desert begins some 700 to 800 kilometers north of the capital and extends until the border with Ecuador. The coast to the south of Lima is more romantic. Close to the capital, places to swim may be found, located in rocky bays. The wine-growing parts of Peru can be found in this area. After some 100 kilometers, the land becomes desert-like here as well, and remains so clear to the Chilean border. Paracas, a small holiday village, is situated 17 kilometers from Cuzco, famous for about the best brandy in Peru. It has two excellent hotels with swimming pool, the Hotel Paracas and the Hotel Mirador. Those who are interested in the fauna of the Paracas Peninsula or the Ballestas Islands should stay in one of these hotels. The peninsula is the driest point of the country, having received no rain for years. Due to low rainfall and continuous sunshine, the humidity is quite low, and the Paracas wind of 25 to 30 kilometers per hour never ceases. The 335,000 hectares of land has been a natural reserve for 30 years already. It may be visited by ship. A short while after departing from the northern hill of Paracas Peninsula, we can spot the mysterious candelabro. The huge figure was named after a candlestick because of its shape. It was made like the Nazca lines, as the creators cut a half-meter trench into the ground. We can only guess when and by whom this 177-meter-long and 54-meter-wide creation was made. It was first mentioned in 1863. However, there's no proof that it had not existed before that. Some say it helped the orientation of the sailors, while those more romantically inclined think it indicates the place of the pirates' hidden treasure, not to mention those who believe in UFOs. At any rate, the candlestick shape is unique both in the Paracas and the Nazca culture, and we can rightly assume that it illustrates a bear paw cactus, which grows plentifully in Peru. The islands are first primarily for their avifauna. Colonies of Humboldt penguins, Inca terns, pelicans, and vultures live here. The most populous is the group of the red-billed red-legged terns. The excrement produced by the million birds is guano, rich in phosphates, which has been exploited for centuries and is utilized as fertilizer. On the Ballestas Islands, guano is mined for 3 months and delivered by ship. Sea lions also live on the islands, and dolphins swim in the coastal waters. The huge seal males have harems consisting of a dozen females. The young are born in winter between December and March. They're protected animals, so we cannot disturb them by landing, but they can be easily seen and photographed from the ship. The ship tours depart in the mornings, as later there are huge waves. Hats protect against the blazing sun, and raincoats against splashing water, but don't forget to watch out for your cameras. First known Peru archaeologist, Julio Tello, started excavations on the peninsula in 1925. His starting point was a tapestry depicting human figures. This led him to the discovery of a group living here, known to archaeologists as Paracas culture. In the stone-walled burial vaults of the necropolis, Tello found more than 400 skeletons covered in funeral veils. According to the tomb findings, the most commonly made objects were richly decorated, many-colored earthen pots and similarly decorated 25-meter-long woven funeral veils. Is it possible that the Peruvian textile art of today originated here? The nicest old tapestries can be seen in the museums of Lima and Ica. The first society which was strongly divided by class existed on the northern coast of the country around 550 BC. Scientists differentiate the cavernas and the necropolis periods within Paracas culture. Of this culture, only the funeral veils, earthen tomb figures, and jewels buried with the corpses are known, so we have much more information about their funeral cult than about their lives. Ica City is located about 300 kilometers to the south of Lima. Its existence is attributed to Luis Jerónimo de Cabrera, who founded the colony headquarters in 1563. The climate of the area, located 420 meters above sea level, is much more pleasant than that of the capital, sunny, dry, and just rarely foggy. Several nice colonial buildings remained in Ica, especially on the main square and in the surrounding streets. The city is famous for its holidays. The anniversary of its foundation is celebrated in June, harvest in March, and a pilgrimage organized in honor of the patron saint is in October. For each event, crowds wearing luxurious national dress fill the streets, and spectacular dances are also a part of the festivities. On religious holidays, processions are held, lasting well into the night in October. The Museu Regional de Inca is one of the 3 most important village museums in the country. It covers the major points of the culture of Peru, the Paracas, Nazca, Inca, and Wari cultures. Its coastal excavation collection is especially rich. An exhibition of city history can be seen on the floor. Nearby, we can see a collection of stone blocks decorated with figure engravings, which is operated by the last descendant of the city founder. The deformed skulls and other skeletons bear witness of ancient medical interventions and strange customs. The trophy heads are from Nazca. Ten superior hotels are operating in the city. The oasis-like Hotel Las Dunas Sun Resort can be especially recommended. This is also the location of the travel agency where flights above Nazca lines are organized. Of course, we can choose from several other optional programs: hot air balloon rides, and jeep or bus excursions. With these, we can reach Chauchilla, the ancestral cemetery robbed by tomb thieves, to the Inca ruin of Las Paradones, and to Cohuachi, the main Nazca ceremonial center. We can see the water pipe system of the Cantaloca and the sundial, which is the spiral huge geoglyph near the Pan American Highway. We can visit the Memorial Museum located in the former house of the fanatic researcher of Nazca lines, Dr. Maria Reich, who died when she was 95 years old. Besides all this, we can spend some days resting as well before jumping into new adventures. Five kilometers from Ica, at Huacachina, meter-high sand dunes are waiting for visitors. Beach buggy tours depart from the holiday resort. Halfway between Ica and Nazca, there's a small tourist airport. One of the great adventures of travel in Peru is the flight above the Nazca lines. Of course, it would be nice to examine the famous lines on the ground as well. They were made by removing the upper half meter of the ground. On surfaces with less contact with air, manganese and iron oxide did not settle, and because of this, lighter stripes were formed. However, the drawings can be interpreted only from the sky. The drawings, extending over 520 square kilometers, show geometrical, human, and animal shapes. We can see lizards, albatrosses, hummingbirds, monkeys, vultures, and dolphins. As the tourists of the last decades damaged many lines, today it is prohibited to enter the area. Therefore, we can closely examine lines only in the Palpa Valley. This is 40 kilometers from Nazca, and it has recently been discovered that also here similar lines are slashed into the ground. Those afraid of flying can see part of the shapes on the Pan American Highway from the lookout tower built by Maria Reich. We can also see the shapes on the models of the Inca museums in the pictures sold in the museum souvenir shops. The stories about them are described in several books. However, no irrefutable proof speaks for any one version. The first early writing about the lines can be read in the 16th century notes of Luis de Monzon, who arrived with the conquistadors. Scientific studies started in the 20th century. Dr. Paul Kosak, Dr. Mario Reich, her successor, Dr. Phyllis Pitluga, all thought they had seen the biggest astronomical book of the world, which shows the sun, moon, planets and stars' situation in comparison with each other. With its assistance, the equinox and solstice timing, the rise of rivers, the sowing and harvesting times all became calculable. Eric van Daniken, the main representative of the extraterrestrials' visits, thinks that the Nazca lines were landing strips made for space vehicles. The huge sizes, the perfect dimensions, and their straightness led some scientists to the conclusion that the creators had to have seen their work from very high. The American Bill Sporer, living in Peru, tried to prepare a flying machine from materials which could have been available to the Indians in those ages. The hot air balloon could rise up to 350 meters and traveled 5 kilometers. We don't know whether the Indians could really fly, but Bill Sporer demonstrated that they could have had the possibility to do so. Traveling south from the Nazca Plateau, the way leads to a volcanic area. On this part of the Peruvian coast, the rivers rarely reach the sea, their water leaking into the ground. The natives living here collected this life-giving water and made the desert come alive. The round air holes made in the stone, narrowing as they lead down, are called here ventanas. These were used to get down to the channels to clean or maintain if damages occurred. Allegedly, all this was built at the same time as the Nazca lines, in the period of 500 BC to 500 AD. Approaching Arequipa, we cross perhaps the most beautiful but wildest area of Peru. We can see active volcanoes, highland and coastal deserts, and the deepest canyon in the world. The deepest part of the Del Colca is 3,400 meters. The whole territory of the National Reserve is 367,000 hectares, and the Pampa Cañahuas, located at 4,000 meters, is also part of it, the natural living place of the vicuñas. The llama is the most known ruminant mammal of South America. 4 species are known, and the vicuña lives only in wild. Its wool, as that of the sheep, is shorn. The Indians weave their plant-painted blankets from this wool. The high mountains of the Arequipa surroundings are favorites of alpinists. Here we find even peaks of 6,000 meters, which are relatively easy to climb. Difficulties so not stem from mountain climbing technique, but from the extreme weather conditions and lack of water. In order to avoid mountain sickness, the acclimatization is extremely important. No one should start without an experienced guide, and certainly never alone. At the lightest symptoms of mountain sickness, one has to turn back immediately. The 2 most popular peaks are El Misti and Chachani. Arequipa is one of the world's most nicely situated cities. It is located on a 2,350-meter high plateau of the West Andes, and even 3 volcanoes are projecting behind it. Its weather is very favorable, with 300 days of sunshine per year. Garcia Manuel de Carvajal established the Spanish city in 1540. The city soon became the Spanish Hidalgo's conservative Catholic center. Several churches and monasteries were built. Among them, perhaps the most beautiful is that cathedral, which is located on the southeastern side of the Plaza de Armas. It stands in a circle of colonial-style houses. However, the building itself is neoclassic. Only few buildings from the 16th century remained in the city, destroyed by one earthquake after another. The cathedral, built in 1656, was also destroyed. The one we see today was built in the middle of the 19th century, according to Lucas Poblete's plans. Its pulpit is a present from France. The The 3 pillars are from Italy, the organ from Belgium, and the altar lamp from Spain. The other nice church of the city was built by the Jesuits. On its decorative facade, we can see the date of finishing, 1698. The building, with its 3 gates, 1 tower and dome, compares to Il Gesù of Rome. The unrivaled stone sculptures and stucco ornaments of the main facade are the best examples of mestizo decorating. Its Churriguarasque main style altar has been sculptured of wood and covered with 18-karat gold. A library and exhibition rooms open from the monastery cloisters. Several ancient prints are preserved here, as well as a considerable collection of objects made by Amazonian Indians. The alleys, painted in bright colors and named after Spanish cities, give a real Mediterranean feeling. The walls of the cloisters are decorated with religious frescoes. Today, the remaining colony-aged buildings of the city serve as public offices, banks, or art galleries. Besides earthquakes, also volcanic eruptions and fire damaged Arequipe. Only the latticed system of the streets surrounding the main square keeps the city structure. The Santa Catalina Monastery is probably the most valuable church building of the city, which is almost a town within a city. The 20,000 square meter building takes up a whole house block. It was built in great detail, and after almost each earthquake, it has not only been rebuilt, but extended. This explains its complicated, almost labyrinth-like ground plan. A rich widow, Maria de Guzman, established it in 1579. The daughters of rich Spanish families came here as nuns. Their families had to donate huge sums of money to the monastery. The rich young women held black slaves until the Pope had enough of this practice. His severe decrees made such order that lasted for 100 years. As far as 1970, when the mayor of the city ordered the installation of the line, water, and electricity. The monastery could collect the necessary money by opening the buildings to paying tourists. Instead of the original 1,300 nuns, today hardly more than 20 live here. They spend their days in the closed northern annex of the monastery. The other parts are furnished for museums. The original furniture and the objects of use illustrate the past of the monastery life. The other famous museum of Arequipa exhibits in a cooled glass container in the perfectly preserved ice mummy of an Inca girl who was sacrificed when she was 15. The archaeologists named the girl Juanita. Since then, the Spanish had reported that the Andes nation sacrificed children to obtain the goodwill of the highland gods. The victims were nicely dressed, narcoticized and killed, then taken to the mountain peaks together with small sacrifice statues of silver and gold. The forced sacrifice of Juanita and her fellows was unnecessary. They could not avoid the landslides, earthquakes, and volcano eruptions which killed crowds throughout the centuries. Archaeologist János Gyarmati, a Peruvian expert, poses the question, how can it be that on the American continent societies, anarchic states, even empires developed similarly to the Egyptian, the Mesopotamian, and others of the Old World could exist in Eolithic, see today's Maya civilization, or maximum Bronze Age circumstances without draft animals, except perhaps the llama, almost only based on human strength? And what is stranger, without the use of writing? Just see the ancient Peruvian civilizations, and money. Looking from the Eolithic point of view, event today is not understandable how this could happen, but it happened. And if it happened, we have to draw the conclusion. Societies dividing into classes on state or even empire level, including millions of people, can be established even without metal tools, wheels, and writing, he writes. The museum illustrates the nearly 600-year-old history of these strange societies, including pre-Hispanic age, later the story of conquest, and the colony ages. The researchers divide the history of Peru into 12 sections. The pre-Hispanic, namely the times before the Spanish, started with the Archaic Age. The first settlers came around 6000 BC, who were fishermen and hunters. Part of them later settled and began agricultural activity. We count the starting period from the first ceramic pots from 1800 BC. The society stratification and the monumental stair pyramids and church constructions were already present at this time. After this, the archaeologists differentiate three so-called horizons and two transitional eras. The latter horizon lasted until 1532, the Spanish conquest. The colonial era was initially characterized by the affirmation of the Spanish rule, followed by the period of the War of Independence. By proclaiming the Republic, the former colony's fate had not yet been settled finally. It was rather rough during the 20th century as well. Flower and vegetable markets in South America offer real color, an exotic spectacle for tourists. Such indigenous vegetables and fruits are also sold here, some of which are unknown to Europeans. One of these is the quinoa, a cereal used to substitute corn. The two neighborhood relatives of the potato are the uluco and oca. The tarwit is a kind of bean, while the manioca is a root plant, which is milled into flour. The locoto is comparable to chili. The zapallo is a vegetable similar to marrow, while its relative, the pepino, is more like a melon. Other known local plants are the chirimoya, pacay, and coca. The latter is not only an ingredient in a soft drink, but Indians also chew its leaf for their vitalizing effect. Of course, we can also find several familiar vegetables and fruits, like tomatoes, corn, beans, avocados, oranges, mushrooms, and onions. These are the basic materials of the Peru cuisine. At first glance, Peruvian dishes remind us of Mexican dishes, perhaps more familiar to us. The cuisines of the highland areas and the fertile coastal zone can be well differentiated. Peru's national drink is a beer called chicha, which only a few foreigners are willing to taste because of the method by which it is produced. However, there are also barley, corn, and malt beers produced in factories. The best of the Peruvian wines are the Tacama and the Okukahi. It's hard to resist the markets, buffets, and restaurants offering exotic fruits and dishes, but there are rules we should keep in order to preserve our health. Drink only bottled water, keep away from ice cubes, and eat only those fruits which can be peeled or eaten from its skin. Lake Titicaca in Puno, the harbor city on its bank, may be approached through the Andes by train or by road. Maria Bonifert Intonaine writes in her Peru travel book entitled The Beggar Sitting on Top of the Nugget. We reached the highest point of our way at around 1 p.m., the ridge of the 4,528-meter Crucero Alto, where the single railway line crosses one of the wide footpaths of the plateau. There's a sign on the dilapidated station building, Hotel Ferrocarril, meaning Railway Hotel. Nowhere a soul except the passengers of the train and the staff of Hotel Ferrocarril. This is the bleakest landscape so far on our journey. A sudden strange noise, similar to a child's cry, hits our ears, a creepy, stretched melody. The Altiplano wind. We nearly feel relief when leaving the area behind us, which is so reminiscent of a desolated lunar landscape. Now we're on our way down. Lunch is served. Roasted chicken with tastily prepared rice and fresh salad, and a bottle of ice-cold beer. Incredible how they could prepare all this so fresh and appetizing. The beer pops loudly when we open it, and its froth is immediately on the table. The other tables are also being cleaned. We're not the only victims of the air pressure difference caused by the altitude. Santa Lucia stands at 4,048 meters. The sun is still burning down, and we feel a bit sleepy during the long train trip. The seemingly endless plateau is suddenly transformed into a deep blue water surface, and more lakes of varying size appear in the till now barren lowland plain. We're nearing the basin of Titicaca Lake, indicated by lagoons, hollowing deep valleys into the hills of the plateau, and making the sky cloudless, its color ranging from clear azure to deep blue. What a marvelous land! Our glance thirstily drinks as the yet unknown crystal-clear colors, fantastic shades of yellow and blue, which exist only at this high point and with such low humidity and such air free from any pollution. Puno, with 102,000 inhabitants, is the center of the colony bearing the same name. The Titicaca Lake is the only navigable lake in the world located so high, at 3,820 meters above sea level. Its surface is 8,300 square kilometers. This huge body of water has a temperature balancing effect. It moderates a change in temperature which can exceed even 40 degrees. The symbolic significance of the snowy peaks reflected in the dark blue water of the lake is at least as important as the lake's practical role for the natives. Mythical stories are connected with it. According to them, the lake rose from the tears of the bound and starved Saint Puma, the Titi. One myth of Inca origins says that the Viracocha, the god of creation, placed the first couple onto the surface of the Titicaca Lake and gave a goldenrod into their hands in order to find the land which is the most suitable for cultivation. The opinion that the Inca gold was hidden in the lake from before the Spanish, together with Huascar's 200-weight golden necklace, may have been connected with these beliefs. Captain Cousteau fruitlessly searched the bottom of the lake with his mini-submarine. Even so, from an archaeological point of view, interesting findings were made there, which can be seen today in the museums of Tiwanaku and La Paz. The biggest part of the lake belongs to Peru, the smaller one to Bolivia. An important linguistic and ethnic border extends along the shore of the lake. The northern Quechua language block ends here, and the world of the Aymara-speaking nations begins. The lake and its surroundings served as the home of three major well-known ethnic groups in pre-Hispanic ages, and on its northern and eastern sides the Colas, on the west the Lupacas, and on the southern the Pacajis. Titicaca Lake is, however, also home to a special small nation. The Uro Indians live on self-made floating islands on the lake. The basis of the Uro's traditional existence is fishing. They catch trout, priestfish, and other lake fishes, but also grow potatoes on the small plots in their houses. Tourism plays an increasingly important role in their lives. The ethnic group today consists of 1,500 persons with their own language, living on about 40 islands made of totora. This plant, similar to sedge, offers them a genuine possibility to live. The living islands are made out of cut totora bundles. As the bundles absorb water and rot, they place new bundles on the island's surface. Some are really floating islands, while others are fixed to the bottom of the lake. The houses standing on the islands are also made of totora reed, as boats used for lake transportation. However, the totora became world famous when Thor Heyerdahl used it to build his legendary Kon-Tiki ship, with which he traveled 4,300 sea miles from Peru to Polynesia to prove the existence of the sea connections between ancestral Peru and the Far East. A well-known anthropologist of California University, in the January 1966 issue of the periodical American Antiquity, drew attention to the similarity between the reed ships of ancient Peru and ancient Egypt. And the reed ship is not the only characteristic in which these two ancient cultures show surprising similarity. We have to go up to the Andes and examine the Indian reed ships again, I told my wife. The very day the Congress ended, we got on a plane towards La Paz in Bolivia, and on the next day we were already there at the sky-blue Titicaca Lake at the top of the world, 12,500 feet high above sea level, where all around us, 6,000 and even 9,000 feet higher, snow-covered peaks were stretching towards the pure blue sky. Behind us on the plateau were the ruins of Tiahuanaco, the biggest capital and cultural center of South America from before the Inca era, with its ravaged Acapana pyramid, megalithic walls, and gigantic statues of its unknown priest kings hewn in stone. Out on the lake, some Aymara Indians were fishing and navigating here and there in the strong wind. Only the swelling sails could be seen in the distance. On most of the boats, battered linen was flying, but true to tradition, one or two had put huge totara reed matting at the top. 3 ships were coming towards us with lightning speed, and soon we could already see the Indians with their huge striped hats peeping from behind the sails. Then also the ships appeared above the waves. It was a marvelous spectacle. Ships made with such expertise. Stalks of straw placed with the greatest accuracy gave the ship perfect symmetry and elegantly streamlined shape, and the closely bound, on the front and back sandal-shaped curved, peaked bundles seemed to be puffed-up points or gilt beams. They plowed through the water with high speed among the reeds on a straight shot right to the shore, where they firmly stopped in the mud, and the Indians waded to the dry land with their catches, remembered Thor Heyerdahl at the beginning of the Big Adventure in his book entitled The Raw Expeditions. The Norwegian sea biologist and anthropologist led 5 expeditions, making him immortal and proving that the ancestral ethnic groups could have reached each other through the seas and oceans. The scientist died on April 18, 2002 in Italy. He was buried in his native country with as much pomp as a king. Those interested in the Inca culture should visit the nearby Mocoyacta ruin area, with an outstanding example of Incan sacral architecture. Though entry is free of charge, we have to pay for it in sweat before we get to the entrance up the inclined 4-kilometer path. Andahuaylilas is a pretty mountain town 40 kilometers from Cuzco in the Andes. It's famous for its 17th century Jesuit church, for the carvings and paintings in it, particularly the canvas illustrating Esteban Murillo's Immaculate Conception. The Feliz Viaje peak is 4,335 meters high, but even this seems small next to the 2,000-meter higher Ausangate, which is climbed by traditionally dressed Indians of the environ at the beginning of June every year. They don't do it for sport, but out of faith. According to their belief, the gods of the high mountains can supply them with life-giving rain as well as destructive landslides or storms. Therefore, it is important to win their favor. They bring a lot of ice from the peaks and use it for healing and magic. Along the roads crossing the mountain, there have been stopping places since ancient times. Nowadays, tourists can not only have a rest at these places, but can also do some shopping. The people from the neighborhood bring their foodstuffs to sell here, hoping to get a few coins. By bus from Andahuaylilas, we reach Cuzco, the cradle of the Inca Empire. Some etymologists say the name Cuzco means center of the earth. If it is not the center of the earth, this city hiding in the Saint Valley between the snowy peaks of the Andes was at least a real center of the Inca Empire. According to the Spanish chronicler Manco Capac, the Incas established Cuzco around 1200. Many researchers think its city structure illustrates the titi, the puma, the sacred animal of the Incas. The head of the animal is the ritual building block of the Susquehanna. Its body is the city, and its legs are the outer districts. In 1533, Spanish conquerors moved into the palaces and churches of the Inca rulers. As Pizarro chose Lima as the capital of the Spanish colony, the importance of Cuzco decreased significantly. Several times the Incas besieged Cuzco to chase away the Spanish. The first time was in 1534, the last in 1780, but none of their efforts were successful. The 17th century was a period of helping the towns to flourish. Manuel de Mollinedo y Angulo even donated his property to finance painters and sculptors who restored and decorated the churches and public buildings of the town. The cathedral is standing on the main square. 2 small churches fit smoothly to its sides. Allegedly, the Inca Quishuarcancha stood on their place, but this fact has not yet been proven by excavations. Building on the 3-door Latin crucifix ground plan church was begun in 1559. Its 2 side aisles are named after the apostolic letter and the gospel. In front of the side aisles there are 2 towers bearing the same names. The bell, nearly 6,000 kilos in weight, was found next to Titicaca Lake and is called Maria Angola. It was allegedly named after a black slave girl who fell into the furnace while working and was transformed into a bell. 10 side chapels belong to the main church. The 33-meter-high main facade is in Renaissance style, while the main altar is in neoclassic. It's carved from cedar wood and covered with gold sheets. The most significant cult object in the cathedral is the Black Christ sculpture. Throughout the centuries, the candles have covered the wooden work with black soot. The most famous Quechua carver artist, Juan Tomás Tuiro Tupac, made the pulpit, which is also from cedar. The most famous among the nearly 400 paintings of the church is The Last Supper, the work of a local artist, Marcos Zapata. The remains of the bishops and archbishops of Cuzco rest in the chapels. The Dominican church and monastery blocks, together known as Coricancha, was the most important cult place of the Inca Empire. The meaning of Quechua is Golden District. Churches devoted to the main gods were arranged around an inner yard. This was the navel of the world, actually the center, from where 42 lines started. Along these we find 328 huaca, consecrated places that are linked to religious beliefs. Several travel agencies offer their services in Cuzco. Microbuses take us to any sacred place we desire. Of course, it's impossible to visit all of them, so let's prepare an itinerary of the places we're most interested in. Help in making decisions can be found not only on the internet, but also in travel books. On the western side of the area along the Safi River, a terraced garden extends where the plant and animal statues made of gold and silver were erected. Following colonization, Juan Pizarro donated the area to the first Cuzco bishop, monk Vicente Valverde, who was his close relative. Following this, the Dominicans brought Coricancha into their possession. The huge white statue of the first Inca, Manco Capac, has been erected in Huasapata Park. Viva el Peru is the inscription on the foot of the sculpture. The Saint Valley is part of the valley of the Urubamba River, between Pisac and Machu Picchu, which is the most spectacular area of the Andes. The valley, with a subtropical climate at 2,000 meters, is surrounded by snowy peaks. The entire area of Cuzco belongs to the Sacred Valley, in which we find 11 ruin areas or still existing settlements. These can be visited using a ticket booklet, which we can buy in hotels or travel agencies in Cuzco. Sacsayhuaman, the biggest building block ever built by the Incas, is located above Cuzco. This is the head of the imaginary puma. In Queco, there is a stone block carved like an altar, which was probably used as an altar. Around it, there are Inca drawings carved in the cliffs. Certain sources identified Salampuncut as Chuquimarca, the big church. Puca means red. Pucara means fortress. Whether the ruin area of Pucupacara was a fortress or not is unknown. The assumption seems to support that the high wall encircling the area and its location are of strategic importance. We find it on the road towards Pisac at an altitude of 3,750 meters. Tambo Machai is a sanctuary built above 3 springs. In the polygonal wall built from huge stones, cabins of unknown origin can be found. The ruins of Pisac project 600 meters above the similarly named settlement. It was probably once the private property of the Incas of Pachuputec. The small town of Calca, prosperous even today, is standing on Inca ground. Yucay was once the property of Inca rulers. Urubamba settlement is located on the bank of the river of the same name. The former Inca palace, Huayana Capac, stood there. The roadway crossing the Urubamba Valley ends at Ollantay Tambo, main attraction of which are 6 stones. All are brilliant, standing monoliths. Their material is pink porphyry, and almost nothing else remained from the big church. They were built to face the rising sun, and there are strange knobs and bulges on them, which are similar to other stones shaped by the Incas. For instance, those in Tiahuanaco, says film director Hugh Thompson in his volume entitled The White Rock, an exploration of the Inca heartland. The sights of the Saint Valley can also be visited on a one-day excursion as a rally departing from Cuzco, but we can also find pleasant accommodation in other places. The poncho-making loom is a wooden frame made of smaller and larger roughly worked sticks. One can be found in almost every household, smaller versions as well, with which ribbons, ropes, or cocoa bags are made. Spinning, weaving, wool bleaching, and coloring are the everyday tasks of the women, but also the men are experts. Here, everything is literally made by hand, writes Maria Bonifert in her aforementioned travel book. She also quotes Arguedas, the excellent scholar of the Andes and Peruvian culture. Legends and myths connect to every point of the mountain and valleys, as they are inseparable from those historical events which took place here during the Inca Empire centuries ago, and later sealed the fate of the prospering civilization. The residents of the area respect Cuzco even today with superstitious fear and pangs of conscience. Therefore, the city is still and will remain one of Peru's most important factors from geological, historical, and mythological points of view. The atomic elements of the ancient civilizations of the Andes can still be discovered in the structure of Peruvian society, and the mixed culture developed during the conquest is from several points of view also the basis of modern-age society. Who were the Incas, in reality? Where did that handful of people come from to the area of Cuzco, who would irrefutably rule several tribes until the arrival of the white man, and who were able to establish a huge, well-organized empire? Some scientists say that the Incas leaving the Quechua tribe are the late descendants of the ones establishing the Tiahuanaco civilizations. Others say the Incas do not originate from any Andes tribes, not even from the Quechua, whose language and traditions they considered as their own. Is it possible they arrived from the coastal region as unknown, barbarous conquerors and forced their will on the people who were living here? Old chroniclers say that the Indians considered the Incas supernatural creatures originating from a different world. The area of the Saint Valley can be reached by both bus and railway. No vaccinations are required when traveling to Peru, but those against tetanus and hepatitis are highly recommended. We find a pharmacy in every city, so only our regular medicine and a general traveler's pack containing antipyretics, painkillers, and stomach disinfection are necessary to take with us. The remedy for highland illness, soroche, is the locally obtainable medicine called coramine, but cola-like soft drinks or consumption of glucose can also help. Drink plenty of liquids and avoid all physical effort at high altitudes. The Indians take everything they have produced with their own hands to the local markets. Most of the men are experts in wood carving, but there are also potters. Even some know a little bit about weaving, which, however, is primarily women's work. Even the smallest of children do handicrafts, both boys and girls. At the markets, small sculptures of mythical figures as well as richly colored ceramics, often decorated with tribal motifs, are for sale. Perhaps the motifs have been passed down for thousands of years. No one really knows their original meaning. Jewelry in the form of bracelets, earrings, and necklaces are also popular. Then there are musical instruments, panpipes, drums and flutes, Indian feather ornaments and copper reliefs, but the most widely available souvenir is the tapestry. These include ponchos, which are a kind of cape protecting against rain and cold, blankets, but also satchels, gloves, and caps are made with this technique. The cap with ear flaps is familiar to everyone from European subways, where more or less authentic Quechua bands play their ancestors' music and sell their CDs, wearing the colorful caps in an attempt to survive the European winter. Textile art was already a staple tradition in ancient Peru. They used various materials as the base, from chinchilla fur to bat hair from which the clothes of Inca rulers were made. They used the fiber of the cactus-like plants, inner bark, human hair, but the main raw materials were cotton and the fleece of the llamas. Cotton is soft, strong, and warm, and can easily be spun. It's pliable, and it has colors ranging from white to dark brown. Llama fleece is rough, primarily suited for making cords and sacks, while the fleece of its relatives, the alpaca, and mainly the vicuña, was used to produce fine textiles, primarily for the Inca nobility. Besides the usage of natural shades and colors, dyeing had several techniques for which they used mainly vegetable materials, but also the plants made of cochineal insects or purplefish. They painted the material just before weaving or stamped the already made textile. The other technique was batik, when they covered the parts they did not want to paint with wax or fabric. One thing is certain, ancient Peruvian textile art was incredibly rich in preparation techniques, although the tools were extremely simple. They used only a reel consisting of one stick and a ceramic disc or ball, which even today can be seen in almost every woman's hand in the Andes. A simple back-stretching loom or weaving frame was used, but the weaving technique was especially complex. Similar to some other settlements of the Saint Valley, Ollantaytambo is built on a former Inca settlement which basically had two parts. On the place of the city today could have stood the citizen town, while the Celtic buildings in the extensive terrace group could have been situated on the hillside towering on the opposite bank of the Concha stream that pours into the Urubamba. The Pincuyuna, projecting above the northern city part, is a strange building with many doors, standing alone on the mountain, and can really be seen only from the side of the ruin and approached on a steep path. The generally accepted opinion is that its function was to store arms. On the higher parts of the mountain, more buildings serving as observation points can be seen. On the western bank of the Patacancha stream, opposite the city, a rectangular-shaped square can be found, which is surrounded by buildings made of adobe bricks. This is Manay Rakai. Through the gate on its western side, we can enter the Celtic sector of the city. The buildings we find here are situated on a steep hillside. The lower part of the hillside is occupied by the terraces designed to prevent erosion. The stairs dividing the terraces lead up to the Church of the 10 Windows, named after the 10 trapezoid-shaped boxes on the back wall of the former building. The ornate gate leading through the wall leads to the most important church, the never-finished Big Church. Its huge building stones are lying everywhere, among them 6 blocks fitted together, each approximately 90 tons, which, based on the size, some people suppose could have been the main altar. The agricultural terraces extending to the other bank of the river were parts of the settlement. Down on the left bank of the river, the Chocana, on the right bank of the Inca Pintai, protected the city. Even farther down, a bridge arched over the river, and its huge stone blocks still stand today. The main gate of the city, which was part of the wall that surrounded the city, still stands, half a kilometer from the bridge. On the northern part of the Celtic sector, pipes diverting the waters of the source and baths can be found. The most famous of them, the Inca Princess's Bath, which is again a perfect example of the harmonic unity of Inca architecture and nature. The building of the bath is built right into a cliff, the water flowing from there. The city was named after Ollanta, the Inca leader. This city of the Incan era, strengthened by a wall, played an important role in controlling. However, it was not a fortress. The roads leading to Antisuyu, the home of the most dangerous jungle tribes. The inhabitants of the city, with a ground plan shaped like a trapezoid, probably belonged to the Inca nobility, while the street people could have lived to the south of the Celtic sector. The trellised street structure of the present city is the same as that of the Incan era. Walking on the streets which still have Inca names, the visitor can find countless still inhabited houses from the Incan ages, as well as Incan walls. The households still use pipes of the Inca era, running at the edge of the alleys or down the middle. Before moving on, it's worth tasting a few characteristic local drinks. The mountain railway following the river valley starts from the Ollantaytambo railway station. This railway, built in 1868 under the leadership of Henry Meigs, an American engineer, seems at first sight out of date, obsolete, and ridiculously small compared to the huge traffic which it has to carry. The station building itself was built in the last century, and since then not much change has been made on it. With its small windows, low roof structure, reminds us of the outer storage buildings of our stations. But this narrow steel pair of rails is the life-giving axis of the mountainous region. The small, chugging train that runs the 1,000-kilometer track 3 times a week is at least as important to the Highlanders as the sun or water. It provides the only connection to the outer world. If the railway's transport stops in the White City for any reason, Cuzco and Puno, the 2 big cities of the Andes, remain without raw materials and food. This railway is called by the pet name Backbone of the South, and it is not an exaggeration. Without this traffic, backbone, the prosperous villages and cities in the southern region of the Andes would simply dissolve. There's a long queue standing in front of the cashier, mostly villagers with huge bundles and some venturesome tourists who are willing to undertake this whole-day train trip demanding serious physical endurance on the plateau. The crowd, as generally everywhere in Peru, is waiting peacefully, patiently in front of the only cashier. There are carriages of 2 kinds in the Arequipa-Cusco line, first and second class. The first class is almost exclusively reserved for tourists. The line leads through small villages past homesteads. Huge cactuses appear on the billowy hillsides of the plateau in the gaps of the cliffs. Their candlestick-shaped, branchy phylum sometimes reaches 2 or 3 meters. We go ahead in a narrow pass hollowed into the cliff, making countless turns during just a few minutes. We go higher and higher. The small diesel locomotive wheezes up the mountain, pulling the carriages. The village picture is the usual: some stone houses and a small church, a quotation from The Beggar Sitting on Top of the Nugget, the very appropriate title referring to the poor country's endless possibilities. We are close to the top of our Peruvian tour, Machu Picchu. Would anyone believe what I found? Shouted American historian and archaeologist Hiram Brigham, the explorer of Machu Picchu. The Inca city, hidden between the peaks of the Andes, is perhaps the most mysterious ruined city of the world. It has been hiding for 4 centuries on a hillside at 2,450 meters altitude, protected by almost vertical hillsides covered by green forests, often wrapped in clouds. In 1350, even Pizarro himself was surprised how quickly he had managed to occupy the country. Tribal wars inside the Inca Empire weakened the natives' resistance, and their foot soldiers could not compete with the Spanish cavalrymen. Manco Capac, the defeated emperor, escaped from Cusco, and in the mountains established a new capital named Vilcabamba, where his dynasty remained for 36 years. Hiram Brigham, a teacher at Yale University, was looking for this city in 1911. And the same thing happened to him as to Columbus. He made a sensational discovery, although not finding what he was looking for. Departing from Cusco, he walked around the banks of the Urubamba River, where he met an old local who offered to guide him to the ruins called Machu Picchu, namely Old Peak, already overgrown by jungle. The way led along untrodden paths over unsteady suspension bridges spun of ropes above precipices until the archaeologist caught sight of the ruins of the fascinating Inca citadel. What he saw, of course, was not even similar to today's spectacle. In 4 centuries, the jungle had almost entirely taken the former buildings into possession. Brigham thought he had found Vilcabamba, and the following year he started an expedition to clear the ruins of trees, bushes, and undergrowth. The archaeological excavation, the saving of finds, and the conservation of ruins had begun. He met with one surprise after another: buildings built of white granite blocks taller than a human being, ruined churches, public areas, baths and yards excited and mesmerized the members of the expedition. I slowly realized the explorer wrote in his diary that the wall and the semicircular church adjacent to it above the cave were the finest masonry work of the world. My breath nearly stopped. What could this place be? Today we know that the fortified small Inca town of approximately 1,000 inhabitants was uninhabited even before 1572. The Spanish never found it, so it remained singularly intact during the centuries. Only the thatched roofs of the houses had mouldered. Later, Bingham excavated 2 Inca cities, but he did not recognize that one of these was Vilcabamba. At least this is what another researcher, Jean Savoy, thought in 1964. Today we consider Machu Picchu an extremely important Inca city of religious significance to which religious pilgrimages probably had led. The settlements located along the roads leading here, Sayakmara and Winai Waina, discovered by the Hungarian Paul Fejus, became the stations of this pilgrimage, where pilgrims can cleanse themselves in the baths in order to step through the Sun Gate free of their sins. The planning and construction of Machu Picchu, together with the multi-level blocks of palaces, church, residences, stairs and water pipes, wells and agricultural terraces, are considered a masterpiece. It is imaginable that the Inca archaeologist worked by using earthen models. We can read in the volume by James Harper and Jennifer Westford entitled On the Field of Legends. What is sure is that the workers delivered the huge granite blocks to the scene without draft animals and steel tools, using rollers and levers. They formed and ground the stones at the place of construction, then fitted them together precisely without using mortar. The main square was the center of city life, the scene of celebrations and markets. The dignitaries' houses and offices were located on the terraces surrounding the square, while the peasants' raw stone houses were built on the lower levels. Machu Picchu is one of those rare historical places from which peace is spreading as destruction has avoided it. However, it can thank its unrivaled position also to its situation, as it was a stone eagle nest between the cloudy peaks of the Andes halfway to the sky.